So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my endeavors with clay and doll making and all this stuff I probably shouldn't be doing because I'm not that good at it and I'm making up the whole thing as I go, and so it creates a little bit havoc. So when I was a kid around 10, 11, I started getting into polymer clay and I was really into it and actually got relatively good at it, and for my age, pretty good at it. But I was convinced that I sucked at it and stopped doing it for almost 10 years when I was about 14. Because, 14-year-olds and their self-esteem, especially 14-year-old me and my self-esteem. But what kind of got me started being comfortable with polymer clay was this silly book that I still have, which is Clay Characters for Kids. It shows how to do fairies and dragons and elves and little worms and frogs and all these silly little things. But it gave me a lot of basics to follow when it came to sculpting and clay mixing, especially with polymer clay. So I ended up favoring a lot of Sculpey over Primo and Fimo. And I like the polymer clay because it's non-hardening until you bake it. And you bake it at a comparatively kind of low temperature of 275 for 15 minutes for every 1/8 of an inch of thickness. And it's pretty easy to use stuff and can come pre-made. Pre-colors. So currently now I have a little box. It took a lot to sort of simplify everything so that I could fit pretty much all of my clay stuff in here. The bigger stuff I can't obviously fit in here. But I have blacks and whites up at top, and then I have some more colors down in here. And I just sort of break off little bits and pieces and mix them until I get the color that's kind of right. And then in the bottom, I have a little bit of extra clay and a bunch of tools. So aside from this, when it comes to tools, I also have a pasta maker, which I retrieved from my dad's house and had forgotten about. I recently bought new tools from Michael's that I ended up liking when I was on some of my recent endeavors, which have these ball ends and then have these sort of soft rubber ends that are conical or flat and help make it better for blending and smoothing. So I have been using polymer clay for jewelry for quite a while. This is a little book from Hocus Pocus, which is in polymer clay with just a little bit of acrylic paint to kind of really bring certain colors forward. Somehow this one hasn't sold just yet, and I'm a little disappointed and surprised, which is the Donnie Darko Frank the Bunny. And that's been sitting in my shop for like a month and no one's bought it. And then one that I haven't listed and haven't decided if I want to list is Radu from the Subspecies movies, because they may not be the best movies, but I really love them. They're very fun B movies. And then some in-progress ones that I've been toying around with are a couple of little goblin faces, and so they're pretty cool, and they'll be turned into pieces of jewelry. Right now they're just pendants, and then they'll go up for sale. So an example of stuff that I made when I was about 14 includes this. I think this is kind of the last one. I threw pretty much everything else out, or my dad has it somewhere, or my mom has it somewhere. I don't know. So I have this little cute pixie girl that's based off of characters in the clay book. So my first endeavor when it came to doll making was from early last year, late like December 2015, January 2016, something like that, which is a Jareth doll, which is a little goblin king. Now, he doesn't look awful, but he also doesn't look great because the whole time I was doing this, I wasn't measuring properly. I wasn't fully prepared for this whole endeavor. So it was a bit of chaos to do. His jacket and his boots are made out of moldable foam. My shithead ex-roommate's cat got a hold of his boot, so it has bite marks all over it. But otherwise there's a lot of felt in here, some scrap fabric. I sewed on a little shirt and little pants onto a cloth body and used some yarn that I kind of frayed to do his head, and he has little velvet gloves, and one of them even has a little crystal on it, and then painted his face on. And then some polymer clay odds and ends for the details on his jacket. And it's not awful, but it's really not that good either, especially because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I'm still pretty proud of him. He turned out okay, but I didn't really have a big game plan. So I made a second attempt at making a doll, which went much better. I lost a lot of sleep over it, but it went much, much better. And it was based off of these. So if you've seen my book show and tell videos, you've probably noticed these little trolls, these little troll creatures hanging out on my bookshelves. I think my mom got them somewhere in South America. I want to say Argentina or Chile, but she did bring back these cute little handmade troll creature people, whatever they are. They're very cute with their little hand-sewn clothes that look like they're probably made out of socks. And then this one has a bundle of sticks and a little leather cap with some moss and some hair. But I have 4 of them, and if you've seen the book show and tell videos, they're on, I think, 4 out of 5 of my bookcases. So I was kind of looking at that the other day and remembered a sketch that I did, I want to say a year ago, of a troll king that I have featured in a couple of stories I've written, which admittedly I haven't shared, and will eventually, I promise. And so I decided to make Troll King. So he actually turned out pretty handsome. I'm really proud. I wanted to try and use paper clay because I had never used paper clay before, and I sculpted his head, and then it was cracking, and the way it was drying, I was like, I hate this. Lost a full night of sleep overthinking how could I fix it, so I made him again in Polymer Clay. So I made his head and his hands in Polymer Clay. And he is posable. And the reason he's posable is he has a felt body there is wire going through. There's like 16 gauge aluminum wire that's pretty easily bendable going through him. And then, I mean, I sculpted his head and hands and made a cloth body, and I didn't have any cotton stuffing for him, so he's actually filled with moss and lavender, so he kind of smells like a Troll King, which is a bonus. And then sewed little leather pants. He's got a little purple and gold waistcoat. He's got a shirt that has a ruffly front, and then sheared wool for his hair and his beard, which that was the finishing touch. And I ordered that, and I had to wait almost a week and a half. So I ordered that the night I started this project, and then he was almost done, and I just had to wait for the wool to arrive so that he would not be bald anymore. But so he has this crazy big hair that involved brushing and straightening and layering, and he also has this really cool cape, which is made out of leaves that you can get from Michael's in bags. They're like table setting leaves, which is done row by row, hand sewn onto a piece of black fabric, just kind of in a gradient going up, with a faux fur collar. And I'm very proud of him, and I don't want to sell him because no one will buy him for what he's worth to me. And since he's based off of a creature that I know personally as a story figment, he's very personal to me, and he doesn't mean as much to everybody else as he does to me. So he's got acrylic gems for eyes. I did a couple of different sets for the teeth were baked separately so that I could just stick them into the lip and then bake it again, because you can bake Polymer Clay more than once. His head is attached to a wire spine, and then everything's all connected, so he's posable. And he's definitely a much better endeavor than my previous one, and I'm very proud of him. And I've been showing him off to everybody. He even has a tail that is, in fact, bendable, because I don't know if anybody cares about trolls or reads about trolls a lot. I'm a big Brian Froud fan. I like John Bauer. And they always have a very long tail, especially in Scandinavian and Swedish folklore. So he needed a tail, and he rules an autumn court or something. Anyway, I figured that would be of some interest to people, because I'm super proud of him. I've just been wanting to show him off to everybody. But I'm not an expert in Polymer Clay or in sculpting or anything. I am a two-dimensional artist, dabbling in three-dimensional art sometimes. I'm still not very comfortable with it. I didn't use it for almost 10 years because I was convinced I was terrible at it. And I'm not terrible at it, but I'm nowhere near as good as a lot of people are that are more comfortable with three-dimensional medium, and I just like to paint. I don't like to sculpt that much. It's more difficult, and that feeling that the polymer clay leaves on your hands is very frustrating. But there can be reward for crazy endeavors too. I know that there are all kinds of ways to approach sculpting and creating, and if you want to dabble and explore, that's always great. I know I've just been using the polymer clay for the longest, and it's the most malleable and the easiest. I mean, his head is sculpted around an aluminum foil ball so that I wasn't wasting too much clay. His hands are sculpted around aluminum foil too, so that way you can save space and make him lighter. And that's one of the big tricks. I used to apprentice temporarily under a local polymer clay sculptor who does gigantic horses up in Park City, Utah, and so I grew up learning from other people too. Anyway, if you want to dabble and explore, I do recommend trying and not being afraid of failing, because sometimes even the failures aren't real failures, and they can still be their own different kind of success. Till next time, Darklings.